You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So we've got a situation in Seattle where a repeat offender is actually closing down a Starbucks store because the employees are afraid for their own safety. They're like, if that guy gets out of jail, he's said multiple times he's going to come and kill us. That's not good. What do we do? Well, they've been shutting down the store. They closed the store down early just to kind of see what goes on with this guy. And the reason I'm reading this article is we've got a city attorney race coming up, and the two leading candidates couldn't be from more different sides of kind of the political spectrum. We're going to talk about that for a second here towards the end, because believe it or not, that actually has to do with why we've got a guy that has on numerous times said, I'm going to end you, and out loud with a knife in a striking motion. I mean, this is not new. And Seattle's got a list of these kind of characters throughout the city. And everybody's like, it's okay. I mean, what could possibly go wrong when a mentally disturbed person has a knife and is threatening people on a daily basis? What could possibly go wrong there? Well, I think reasonable people understand that a lot could go wrong. That's not how you want this to end. And unfortunately, I've had this discussion with so many people. Cities like Seattle that have these issues going on, it's going to take somebody, basically being offed in order for there to be some more attention drawn to the situation. And we're like, that's not good. That's what's going on in Seattle. Train wreck. So that's what we're talking about today. All right, let's jump on in. Before we do, I'll introduce myself. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, and I read the news from that perspective. All right, let's do this. Workers at a local Starbucks store, Starbucks, right here from Seattle, said they feel like they are at the mercy of a man who has repeatedly threatened employees and customers, prompting managers to shutter the location for a few days because of safety concerns. Now, whatever city you're in, maybe you're in San Francisco and you're like, what's the big deal? That's not news. That's just everyday occurrence. A lot of other cities, when you've got somebody that's mentally ill, they get the help that they need, right? They do. Or if they're breaking the law, like threatening people with a knife, they get put away because they need to be taken off the streets because they're obviously a safety hazard for the general population, specifically those wanting coffee at the First and Pike Starbucks in downtown Seattle. This is, think Pike Place Market. It is right there. Okay. So according to Seattle police, the workers, so you've got a little bit of fish action, the guy's throwing the fish. Yeah. And then you've got crazy guy with knife threatening to kill everybody. You've got that going on across the street. Not a good look. But, we've got very diverse economy here in Seattle. I mean, According to Seattle police, the workers are worried the man who has been terrorizing them would once again be released from jail and return to the store at First Avenue and Pike Street to carry out his threats to kill them. So, I mean, this is nuts, right? I mean, does anybody see just how wild this is? This guy has been known to do this on multiple occasions, and he's known down at the Target just a few blocks away for ripping stuff off and just basically causing a commotion, right? The most recent incident occurred Friday at the normally busy Starbucks location, and they had to close down. I mean, closing a store because we can't keep a crazy person off the streets that's threatening people? What is wrong with this picture? A lot. All right, so the 32-year-old suspect, who KOMO News is not naming, came into the store with a knife and made thrusting motions as he approached employees, according to a police report. Okay, so this guy needs some help, right? I mean, this guy seriously needs mental help. He is making choices that are otherwise just not good. And unfortunately, we're just like, all right, arrest him, keep him off the streets for a little bit. But you know what? He's got mental issues, so we can't put him in jail. We need to just, this is complicating things. We just need to let him go. I mean, what could possibly go wrong with a mentally disturbed dude with a knife? I mean, I'm sure it'll end up well. Yeah, let's just go ahead and release him, and we'll call it good. Sure hope nothing bad happens to anybody at Starbucks or the employees or the managers or anybody walking down the street. Michael Kohler said he saw the incident occur while working his job at the Seattle Shirt Company nearby. This is one of those kind of super tourist areas. Literally, it's like a kind of an alleyway that goes north past the Pike Place Market. It's just lots of people. This is not an out-of-the-way Starbucks where, if you walk down the sidewalk, it's going to be open and you might see one other person. This is loaded up with people. Let's make that clear. All right. So I heard the screaming across the street, and then the cops were telling him, get rid of the knife, drop the knife, drop the knife, Kohler said. And he flipped them off and just kept running. So I think it was last winter, right around the holidays, we had another young man who was mentally disturbed, threatening police with a knife. And this was at the big, the Ferris wheel that is on the waterfront, got an enormous Ferris wheel. It's pretty cool. It was right outside of that, right outside of the Seattle Aquarium. It's on the waterfront. And he came after the police with the knife, and they shot and killed him. So you've got stuff like that. You've got a real history of this stuff going on. So this is not like, well, he did say, he flipped us off and then he kept running. So it's okay. He's afraid of us. He's just going to go away. No, I mean, this stuff it's nutty. Police arrested the suspect nearby, but Starbucks workers told investigators the man's behavior included threats to the employees nearly every day. And people in Seattle just kind of put up with it. They just tolerate it. It's part of the deal. According to police reports, the man has entered the Starbucks location and destroyed hundreds of dollars worth of merchandise. Oh, okay. So there's that as well. He's just making it very difficult to do business at this Starbucks. And yet, what's crazy is it's not like people aren't going to go to that Starbucks. They're just going to be like, well, he's not here now. So, I mean, it's probably pretty safe. He might come later, but yeah, that's okay. This is Seattle. This is just kind of how we handle this type of, what other communities might see as some pretty formidable trauma. But here in Seattle, it's just a day that ends with a Y. Any one of them. So he has also threatened the workers' lives. That makes me sad because they've been so nice to us and nice to the community around us, Kohler said. So it kind of hurts to hear that. So there's this group of people that really want to believe that the homeless are just doing their own thing. They're not a threat to the community. But then there's a certain segment of the homeless community that either needs to be in treatment, detox, so they don't kill themselves, or a mental health care facility so they can get on the right meds, maybe get back on whatever path to whatever their normality looks like. There's a real segment of that population out there as well, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. Investigators said the man has repeated the threatening behavior at a nearby Target, which is a block away from the Starbucks. The suspect has been accused multiple times of shoplifting, harassment, and was suspected of a sexually motivated attempted assault recently. So this guy's, he's bringing it all to the table, right? Seattle City Attorney's Office has filed criminal charges 4 times this year, but the man was found mentally incompetent to stand trial in the first case. He is awaiting the outcome of other assessment before the other 3 criminal cases can move forward. And in the meantime, he's running around on the streets? How does that? It's just Seattle. It's just what we're doing. A judge released him from jail before he returned to the Starbucks last week. I've seen a lot of the same people who go and they get picked up by the cops and they're right back out here a month later doing the same thing, Kohler said. I want to see some change. I want to see some change in this city. I think a lot of its inhabitants do. A lot of its workers do. owners of companies. They're like, yeah, just did a podcast yesterday on Weyerhaeuser, the big lumber company. It's one of those big companies. They're huge here, or they have been, and huge here in the Pacific Northwest. And Weyerhaeuser has corporate offices in what's known as Pioneer Square, very close to this location that we're talking about here in downtown Seattle. They've got office space there, and their management has basically said, yeah, until there's a major cleanup of that Pioneer Square area, and as long as, if there's a cleanup that's sustained for a long period of time, we might consider going back. But this has nothing to do with the pandemic. This has to do with it's not safe for us to send our employees back to that office in Pioneer Square. That's literally straight up what they said. You can check out that podcast if you care. It should be released by the time this podcast is released. Hey, and speaking of that, that's a really awkward segue. We're going to be changing up some of the branding here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. And I want you guys to help. I want you to come up with the name of the podcast, maybe the byline, like news for reasonable people is what's been thrown out before, things that maybe I say every now and then. But we're going to do some polls. We're going to do some, not contests, but just ways that you can send in what your ideas are for what you would like to see. Because we're in a rebranding process, because we started out, Summit Properties Northwest is our YouTube channel, and then we go to the Seattle Real Estate Podcast is hosted on that YouTube channel. It gets kind of confusing, and then the content isn't really real estate. So what's this guy talking about? What's his deal? Oh, this is confusing. And the podcast has taken off to the extent that we're at that position now where we need to rebrand and kind of get all of our stuff lined up so the algorithms grab it and understand, okay, what is this podcast about? Is it about Seattle real estate? Not really. What is it about? Well, you watch it. You tell me. And let's come up with that name. And so we're going to be doing some of that stuff, but I want you to be thinking, if you care, and if you want to send in stuff right now, Sean, S-E-A-N, at seattlerealestatepodcast.com. Send it to me. I'll look at everything. And then we're going to do some pretty cool stuff for the people that end up coming up with the names that get voted in. All right. So that's going to be an ongoing thing. So it's going to take a while, because I'm going to give people, the ability to get their opinion out there if you care. Maybe you don't care. You're like, call it whatever you want. Just keep talking. Don't really care. Just you do you, I'll do me. And yeah, we'll all get along. That's how a lot of folks here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast are, because we're reasonable and we don't put up with a lot of nonsense, even though we don't talk about it a lot. Because you start talking about what we talk about out there, things get weird, right? So the suspect has remained jailed since his most recent arrest last week, and he's expected to go before a judge Tuesday afternoon for a felony harassment case filed with the county prosecutor. All right, here's where we take a little bit of a side hook turn. The two candidates running for Seattle City Attorney were recently asked about repeat offenders, because this is a huge topic, not only in Seattle, but most progressively led Democratic cities, right? Let's just throw that out there. Nicole Thomas Kennedy said the solution does not rely on locking people up. All right. That's where she stands. She's an abolitionist of basically the whole legal system. That's a broad categorization, but she's an abolitionist. All right. So yeah, let's get rid of it all and start over. And don't really know what that is, but let's just start over, and what could go wrong there? And then her opposition is, more conservative. Oh gosh, what are we going to do? We can't have that in Seattle. The wheels will just come off. Oh, they already did. They already did a long time ago. And some of the thoughts on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast are that I bring up situations that don't paint Seattle in the greatest of lights, but it's real. And so, that's a theme that's in there too. Sean making fun of Seattle on the Make Fun of Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Stuff like that. It's just kind of funny. Or, hey, in spite of me being from Seattle, or this podcast coming from Seattle, we can actually talk about topics of stuff that maybe doesn't make our city look so great, but should be addressed if we want things to get better down the road. That's reasonable talk. That doesn't go far in today's society. So, we got to keep that a little bit quiet. All right. So Nicole Thomas Kennedy said the solution does not rely on locking people up. Well, I'm going to go with, if you lock this guy up who has mental problems with the knife, you're keeping him off the streets. You're taking away his ability to mess strangers' lives up, mess the people that he's already threatened at Starbucks, mess up the people at Target, the employees. So I don't know. I'm going to say the system does rely on locking people up. Not everybody, because here we go. What we don't have right now is scaled up mental health services. Now we shut all of our mental institutions down and just emptied them out. We've emptied out the prisons as well. So we scaled up mental health services, scaled up substance abuse services. Okay, you scale those bad boys up, people may not want them. So when you're there, crazy people may not want help. So you got all the mental health services in the world. You can't make somebody go in a mental institution. You can't make somebody get substance abuse help, but you can if you incarcerate them. So, that's the rub, right? Those are the things the city desperately needs. Yeah, mental health services and scaled up substance abuse services. Absolutely, we do. But you also got to keep the knuckleheads off the street. And how are you going to do that if you're just going, we need more services? That's not going to work out well, because it's not working out well right now. It's just not. It's a broken system. And Davison, the other candidate for Seattle City Attorney, said that while she supports social service alternatives, as do I, it's not the city attorney's role to stand up such programs. She's basically saying, abide by the law. We've got law in place. Use it. Whew, those are tough words in a city like Seattle. It's not the city attorney's role to stand up such programs. Whew. That sounds like a voice of reason. She running for the right Seattle city attorney position? I don't know. But that'll be a super interesting race to follow. That's a race that's going on right now. And we've got the mayor's race. We'll see how that goes too. We've actually got a Republican who's kind of doing stuff, and then we've got somebody that's already on the Seattle City Council that's, I'm sure she'll win. Train wreck. I mean, why wouldn't this be, right? So here's what Ann Davison, the reasonable Seattle City Attorney candidate, we have to follow the law. We're not just here to create policy. Interesting. That sounds reasonable. We have to follow the law. We're not just here to create policy, Davison said. The city attorney's role is to deal with the implementation of our laws, not to create alternatives. Those are fighting words in Seattle. I like it. I like it a lot. That's who I would vote for if I was over there. And, that whole deal. I'm a Bellevue guy. But, Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Okay. So this is an example of what's happening in Seattle. It's happening in LA. It's happening in Portland. It's happening in San Francisco. It's happening in a lot of cities. A lot of cities that I haven't mentioned there. It's ongoing. I mean, it is ongoing. You just got repeat criminals who 55 felony charges. We'll see you next Wednesday. Just constantly rinse and repeat in and out of the court system. Because we believe in our fellow human being so much that we think that they can turn the corner on what the rest of the reasonable people think, that's probably not going to change much. Somebody's probably not going to end up well on one of those ends. Whether it's a cop, they get stuck with babysitting these people. I can't imagine what that's like. Just not fun. Just having to read about it makes you cringe, right? Having to listen to me and talk about it, you're just like, that's somebody's kid out there that's threatening a store, right? I mean, he's 32 years old, just a hair older than my eldest kid who's 28. Somebody's out there with some severe mental issues. If you're running around with a knife threatening people with their lives, that's an issue. That's a problem. That's a problem that needs addressing. Somebody's kid is out there. Somebody's family is going to get wildly messed up when he goes and something super bad happens. And then, there's the 6 o'clock story. Well, 14-time offender. This time he really did it. And this guy, he was off his meds, and you just don't want to see that for people. That's somebody's kid. I don't care if you think the guy should be in jail. I do too as well. Because at that point in time, the family is probably like, do whatever you got to take to keep him alive. Guy needs to be on medication, whatever the professionals. I am not a professional. I'm a real estate guy. But I read enough of these stories and I have enough experience to know you can't make people do stuff they don't want to do. And we've got streets loaded up with those kinds of people right now. And so leadership in the form of Seattle City Attorney, it'll be interesting to see how that race goes here in the city of Seattle. Unfortunately, these races in a city this blue, it's tough. It's tough to watch. And that's why it's tough to go to some of these areas of Seattle. Even people that have been longtime Seattle residents are like, oh, yeah, we just don't go there anymore. Yeah, Weyerhaeuser. Yeah, it's not the pandemic. It's the straight up crime factor that we're trying to avoid by not having our employees go back to the Pioneer Square offices. Yeah, it's just straight up crime. We're going to call it, it's not safe. Oh, okay. And that's on, the heels of other companies, startups leaving Pioneer Square. Covered that podcast. Not new topics. And guess what? I'm going to have content forever, right? I mean, this is just how this goes. Until we get some changes. Make your vote count. If you're in Seattle, if you're one of those 2 viewers of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast actually located in Seattle, make your vote count, because that's how it's done. Unfortunately, we've gone so far the other way that we're paying for it now. We're really paying for it. And a lot of these cities are paying for it. They're like, okay, how'd we get here? All right. We just kind of let everything go, and crimes just aren't crimes anymore. And we're just going to reclassify everything because that's what we do, because that's going to help everybody out. Like this dude trying to, threaten people and do the knife action at people in Starbucks. That stuff's got to stop. That's literally Crazy Town. Podcast from Crazy Town. Yeah, that's another title. I don't know. You guys come up with it. Let me know. All right. I'm out on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Wherever city you're in, if it doesn't have these issues, be thankful. That's where we're at, right? Crazy. Okay, that's it. We'll talk soon. Till then, bye for now. Stay safe. Make good choices. All right, it's what we're doing. Why? Because we're reasonable. We'll talk soon. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.